Hi everyone, Mega Shorts here, bringing you another Doctor Who 5-inch scale action figure review, and today we're going to be taking a look at another one of this year's B&M exclusive figure sets, and this is the Monster set featuring the Cyber Controller from Tomb of the Cybermen, a new Cyberman variant from Attack of the Cybermen, and a new series Sontaran figure. Now, I got this set recently from one of my local B&M stores for $16.99. I also got the 4th Doctor set, which I've already done a review of. Now, we have seen figures of all of these characters in the past, but there are some differences within these figures, and I'll be doing some in-depth comparisons later on in the video. But first of all, we're just going to take a quick look at the packaging they came in. Now, the packaging for this set is pretty much the same as the other B&M exclusive sets from this year. It uses the same design and layout as most of the other 5.5-inch scale collector series figures. So at the top left you have a classic Doctor Who logo, below that you have the clear plastic bubble displaying the figures and their accessories, then the name of the set at the bottom. On the side you get the same again with some pictures of the figures, and on the back you get pictures of the figures once again, the classic Doctor Who logo again, and also the names of the episodes that the two Cybermen figures are from, although you don't actually get an episode name for the Sontaran figure. And then at the bottom we have the same usual product and company information. Okay, so here we have the Cyber Controller from the Monster set, and on the left we have the original version from the Age of Steel wave. Now, as you can see, both of these figures use exactly the same sculpt, but there are some differences in the paintwork between them. The new one has been given a much darker grey on the head sculpt, with a silver band going just below the brain there, which on the original was just plain grey like on the rest of the head. The darker grey definitely helps to bring out the painted detail of the veins on top of the head a bit more, I'd say, and you can see that at the bottom where the orange sort of fades into grey on the new version is also the darker grey that has been used on the rest of the head, whereas on the original it was that lighter grey that you could see on the face and the side and the back of the head as well. Moving down on the new one, we can see that the tubes have also been painted a bit differently this time. They've got sort of a dark grey wash going over the top of them, but on the original they were just silver like the rest of the arms and the legs. And the shoes or boots at the bottom are also a little bit different on the new one this time. On the original they were painted silver with a sort of dark grubby wash over the top, but on the new one they are just simply silver like the rest of the legs. Personally, I never had any issues with the original version of this figure, but I have to say I think this is definitely an improvement over the original. And taking a closer look at the detail of this figure, we can see that this is definitely one of the more simplistic Cyberman designs, and I think they've captured the baggy nature of this particular costume really nicely, with all the creases on the chest, the arms, and on the legs as well. There's some really nice bits of little detail on the head sculpt I haven't already pointed out as well, like these little, what I guess are ventilation holes just on the sides there. There's these bits which I guess represent the ears as well, and the eyes have been painted with a relatively light silver like the rest of the body as well. And to be honest, for the detail, sculpt and paintwork of this figure, I really don't have any complaints. Again, it is a very simplistic Cyberman design, and I think they've done a really good job of taking it and making it into a action figure like this. It's just been done perfectly, to be honest, really no complaints. Now, due to the design of this particular Cyber Controller's head, you can't really get any head movement out of it. Can move it just a smidge, but it's very close to none really. The arms can go up and down from the shoulders. They probably could turn all the way around, but I don't want to risk bending or breaking that bit of tubing on top of the shoulder there. The arms also have the usual biceps swivel joint, but you have to be very careful of the tubing because it is glued onto this part of the arm and this part of the arm as well. They can bend up and down at the elbows. They have wrist joints where they can turn all the way around. There's also a waist joint where you can turn all the way around without any trouble with the tubing. The legs don't have the usual outward movement, which most of the other new series and classic series Cyberman figures have, but you can still bend them backwards and forwards on the top pretty well. You can also bend them at the knees, and again you have to be quite careful with the tubing. And the feet have joints where they can turn all the way around. So the articulation may be a little bit less than what you get on some of the other classic series Cyberman figures in the 5" scale line, but to be honest, I think this is just fine the way it is. It's got all the joints that a figure of this particular Cyber Controller should have really, and I think the bicep swivel joints are a really nice touch, especially considering that they've got the tubing on them, which does hinder the movement a little bit, but still I think it's really nice that they are on there anyway, because they easily could have decided not to add them onto the sculpt at all, considering that the tubing is there and it is something which could be broken if you are not careful enough with the bicep swivel joints. But again, if you're careful with the movement, you can still get a little bit of extra posability out of the arms. So overall, I think this particular figure of the Cyber Controller is really nice. I think the sculpt is absolutely perfect. It's got great detail, and I really like the changes that have been made to the paintwork for this particular variant. It's a nice touch if you already have the original version, or perhaps if you spent a lot of money trying to track down the original, at least you've got a new variant out there you may wish to get. So from me, this particular figure of the Cyber Controller gets a very well earned 10 out of 10. A really nicely sculpted, highly detailed figure with good articulation, and also some nice improvements over the original version. Okay, so here we have the Cyberman figure from the monster set, standing next to one of the previous Cyberman figures from Attack of the Cybermen. Now, this particular Cyberman figure is probably the main attraction of this set for collectors, as we've never actually had a standard Cyberman from Attack of the Cybermen before. We've had this battle damaged version and a completely black Cyber Leader, which both came out in 2011 or 2012 I think, but we've never actually had a normal Cyberman figure from that episode until now, so I guess this is probably why this particular set is quite hard to come by. Aside from the paintwork, the new one is almost exactly the same as the battle damaged version. However, the head is a little bit different this time. The faceplate is no longer removable for this particular version, and the eyes on this version are also completely flat. But if you take a close look at the battle damaged version, you can actually see some sculpted dots on them as well, which are not present on the new version. And taking a closer look at the monster set version, there's no denying that this is easily one of the best classic series Cybermen figures we've had from Couch Option so far, if not one of the best Cybermen figures ever. Pretty much every little feature you see on the Cybermen in Attack of the Cybermen is present on this particular figure. You've got all the tubing going down the arms, the legs, the mesh, little patches of mesh that you can see on the legs and also running along the lower arms as well. Lots of creases in the suit as well, because again, like the Tomb of the Cybermen Cyber Controller, these suits were a little bit baggy in some places as well, so you've got a lot of creases around the knees and around the elbows as well. The chest unit has been done really nicely. It's got some sculpted dots on the top of it, and looking into it you can see some more detail of like buttons and wires and stuff through it as well. To be honest, I would have liked this figure just a tiny bit more if they did the mouthpiece with silver paint rather than leaving it transparent. There is actually quite a nice bit of sculpted detail underneath it where you can actually see the person that's been upgraded. You can actually see their silver chin underneath the transparent faceplate. But if you look closely at the Cybermen in Attack of the Cybermen, or at least most of them, they actually have a completely silver mouthpiece, so this little chin below that or behind that shouldn't really be visible. It's a nice bit of sculpted detail, and I think the reason why it's on this figure was because it uses the same head sculpt as the Earthshock Cyberman figure, and the Cybermen in Earthshock did have visible chins underneath their mouthpieces, so would have made the figure a little bit more accurate if perhaps they painted it silver over the top. Moving on to the Cyberman's articulation now. The head isn't really designed to move. It is a separate piece to the rest of the body, I think, because on the Earthshock Cyberman figure I was able to get a bit of movement out of that, but on this particular variant it does seem to be glued in pretty solid, so don't try and move it like you normally would on other Doctor Who action figures in this scale. The arms can go backwards and forwards from the top. You probably might be able to get them to turn all the way around, but there is that part of the shoulder that sticks out that might cause a bit of damage to the paint or the sculpt, so it's probably best not to do that really. The arms have a bicep swivel joint where they can turn all the way around. They can also go up and down at the shoulders, or at the elbows, sorry. The hands can also turn 360 degrees at the wrists. He does have a waist joint where he can turn all the way around as well, just about, even though he has got that chest unit, which is made out of a bendy material, by the way, so if you do want to turn it from the waist, it shouldn't cause too much of a problem, but it is something just to bear in mind. And the legs have pretty much the standard 5-inch scale figure articulations, so you can bend them all the way out and inwards as well. They can go backwards and forwards from the hips, they can bend at the knees, and he also has articulation at the boots where they can turn 360 degrees. So the articulation on this particular Cyberman figure is exactly the same as it was on the original, and I haven't got any complaints of it whatsoever. Again, the head sculpt isn't really designed to be turned, so don't try and turn that around too much like you would on some of the new series or other classic series Cybermen figures, and the shoulders do stick out quite a bit, so it's probably best not to try turning the arms all the way around too much. But those little hindrances I don't really mind, because again, it's just how this particular Cyberman has been designed, and again, I just think this figure is absolutely amazing when it comes to the detail and sculpt. Would have perhaps liked it a tiny bit more if the mouthpiece was completely silver instead of transparent, but still, that is a very minor complaint about a figure which I think is easily one of the best classic series Cybermen figures we've got out there. Again, it's very similar to the Earthshock Cyberman figure, which is a big favourite among many Doctor Who action figure collectors like myself, so it's got many of the same qualities as that particular Cyberman, and it's also a nice new variant from Attack of the Cybermen we've never had before. This is easily one of my favourite 5-inch scale figures we've had recently, and I think it's really nice that character decided to give us a new clean variant from this episode rather than just a plain old re-release of the battle damaged version or the Cyber Leader, which we already got a few years ago. So from me, the Cyberman from Attack of the Cybermen gets a very well earned 9 out of 10. This is a really, really good figure. Again, the faceplate could have been changed a little bit, I think, but still, again, absolutely awesome figure. And before we take a look at the Sontaran figure, we're just going to take a quick look at the gun accessory it comes with. Okay, so here we have the Cyber gun accessory, exactly the same as it was on the original. It's got all the same detail, all the same paintwork, and it's got that bendy material strap which you can hook over the right shoulder quite easily. It doesn't quite sit on the shoulder as nicely as the strap did on the gun of the Earthshock Cyberman figure, but with some careful posing you can just about get it to sit quite nicely underneath the part of the shoulder that sticks out, and it does fit into the figure's hands quite nicely. You can hook it onto the right hand and just have him holding it like that, or you can have him holding it with both hands like in the episode to get him in sort of a battle pose. And to be honest, I don't really have any problems with this particular accessory. Again, it does take a little bit of time and patience to get the strap to sort of go over the arm properly like it did in the episode, but you can still do it. So from me, the gun accessory gets a 5 out of 5, no problems with it at all, and it's got some really nice detail and paintwork to it. And that is pretty much it for the Cyberman figure, and now we're going to take a look at the Sontaran figure. Okay, so here we have the Sontaran from the monster set, standing next to the original figures of General Stahl on the right and Commander Score on the left, both of which come from Series 4. General Stahl was played by Christopher Ryan, who later went on to play Commander Stark in the Series 5 episode The Pandorica Opens, and Dan Starkey played Commander Score in Series 4, and then later went on to play Strax in some of the more recent seasons of the new series. Now, while the packaging may refer to this Sontaran figure as Sontaran Score, taking a closer look at the faces, we can see that this particular Sontaran figure actually uses the likeness of Christopher Ryan, so it is much closer to General Stahl than it is Commander Score. We can see that the new version also has the General insignia on the collar rather than the Commander insignia. However, there are two different versions of this set out there. You can get a version which has the General insignia like I have, or you can also get it with the Commander insignia. And taking a closer look at the new Sontaran figure's face, we can see that this one has a lot more paintwork to its head sculpt than the original general style figure, helping to bring out a lot more of the creases and wrinkles within the skin, which were present on the original version, but thanks to the extra time and effort they've gone to with the paintwork on the new variant, we can see them much more clearly this time round. It's also worth noting that the shoulders are also a little bit darker on this new version. However, this is something I didn't really notice until now. Now, there isn't really much that I have to say for the head sculpt of this figure, but that is a good thing. I think they've absolutely nailed the likeness to Christopher Ryan in his Sontaran makeup for this figure, and again it's got some really nice detail to it with all the creases and wrinkles within the skin. I absolutely love the grumpy facial expression as well. He's probably the angriest Sontaran we've seen in Doctor Who, because he's pretty much always had this really grumpy facial expression going on. Moving down onto the costume now, again the shoulders are slightly darker this time, and that includes the collar as well, but this wasn't actually something I noticed until I started filming this review, so it's not a major difference, but if you do have them against the previous new series Sontaran figures, you will probably notice it. Again, you've also got that nice general insignia on the collar there, which has been done really well considering the size of it on this figure. And then moving around to the back, we've also got that little ventilation shaft, which Donna whacked one with in the Sontaran Stratagem or the Poison Sky. And then for the rest of the costume, we've got pretty much every little bit of detail that you can see on a new series Sontaran's armour. It's a very big, bulky, muscly kind of design, and I think they've done a really, really good job with it, especially on the legs where you've got all these lines going on and a few creases as well. It's been painted with a very sort of light blue metallic paint. It's quite hard to describe really because it's not very, very shiny, but it has got sort of a glossy look to it, I guess, for lack of a better word. And there is also a sort of dark grey grubby wash going over the top with it, which does seem to be variable between Sontaran figures. I've seen some that have had absolutely loads of it, and then there's been others that have looked a lot more clean. To be honest, I wouldn't really say it's necessary, but I wouldn't say it's all that over the top either. It's not been done to the point where I say it's excessive, and I guess it does help to give them a more battle-worn look. And then moving down to the shoes now, or boots, I don't know what you'd want to call them. You can see a few more lines within the design, and they've got some dark paint within them, and then at the bottom you've just got the this set was first revealed. I'm surprised they haven't done a re-release of a Sontaran Trooper underneath either, time, like the original Sontarans. We haven't got a Sontaran Trooper was back when Series 4 was out. In the grand scheme of things, to be honest, it is better value for money to get a Sontaran variant I guess a head underneath, it is a little bit more accurate rather than just paint, but to be honest, if you're just going to have the figure standing up normally, so I guess it is good that they have decided to release this particular major complaint about this figure really. And like the previous releases of General Style and Commander Score, this one does also come with quite nicely. You do have to give it a bit of a budge to the head sculpt sometimes. Quite nicely, you do have it on. It sits on. I was thinking around the time it doesn't really pop off, and it's got pretty much all the detail that it has in the show really. So no complaints from me. Moving on to the articulation now. Unlike the original General Style and Commander Score figures, this one does have head articulation, so you can move the head from side to side quite well without any trouble. The arms also have ball joints at the shoulders, so you can move the arms outwards and inwards, but if you move them outwards you just have to keep in mind that the shoulders are there and they don't really bend with them either. He has bicep swivel joints, where the arms can turn all the way around from there. There's a standard elbow joints where they can move up and down. He also has wrist joints, where the hands can turn all the way around. There's also a waist joint, which is quite a wobbly one. As you can see, you can get him sort of doing a bit of a dance because it sort of has quite a lot of motion to it. You can also turn him all the way around from there. The legs also have the usual Doctor Who action figure articulation, so you can get them to go all the way out like that, getting to do the splits, which I'm pretty sure we'll never ever see the Sontarans do in a Doctor Who episode. Maybe I'll be wrong. And then from there you can move the legs backwards and forwards from the hips. There's a thigh swivel joint at the knees where they can move up and down. And the feet also have some unusual joints for Doctor Who action figures, which we have only really ever seen on new series Cybermen figures, I think. And you do get a little bit of an ankle pivot with them. You can move them up and down a bit. So when it comes to articulation, this Sontaran figure is pretty good. You get some quite unusual joints that we haven't really seen on many other 5-inch scale Doctor Who action figures with this one, like the ball jointed waist and the ankle pivots, which are quite nice if you want to get him into some dynamic battle poses. I think the head articulation is a really nice touch as well, considering that Sontarans aren't exactly characters that I can imagine moving their heads much, but seeing as we didn't get any head movement on the original versions of this figure, I think it's a nice touch that a lot of people will be quite happy with. And before I give you my final thoughts on this figure, and then my final thoughts for this set, we're just going to take a quick look at the gun accessory he comes with. Now this is exactly the same as it was for the original new series Sontaran figures, however it is just completely black this time. It doesn't have a silver wash going over the top of it like the original versions had. It's got exactly every little bit of detail that we can see on the actual prop in the show. And another good thing about this figure is that it does hold the gun accessory really well. With a lot of other action figures, not just Doctor Who action figures, I've quite often struggled to get them to hold guns properly in both hands, even though quite often they come with things like sniper rifle accessories or just big gun accessories which are meant to be held by two hands. But this Sontaran figure and all the other new series Sontaran figures do hold their gun accessories really well, so you can have them in a casual pose with just one hand, or you can get them in nice battle poses with them in two hands as well. And from me, I'd probably give this gun accessory a 4.5 out of 5. My only problem with it is that it doesn't have the silver wash going over the top of it like the original ones had. I thought that was a really nice touch, and it's a shame not to see it on the new one. But still, that's only a minor complaint, and other than that, I'm really pleased with it. So overall, I think the Sontaran figure from the Monster set is a really nice addition to my Doctor Who action figure collection. To be honest, I am slightly disappointed that this isn't a re-release of Commander Score, because out of both of those Sontaran figures, General Style has easily had the most re-releases, but still it is definitely a really nice improvement over the original, with the more detail being visible in the head sculpt and the slightly darker shoulders. I think the sculpt is absolutely fantastic just the way it is, and I'm really pleased with the articulation as well. Plus it does hold the gun accessory really well, and this is a quality which sadly a lot of other action figures don't have when it comes to holding their accessories these days. And from me, this Sontaran figure gets a very well 10 out of 10. A nice new addition to my Sontaran army, and a nice re-release for people that may not have been able to get some of the other Sontaran figure releases in recent years. Okay, so now the time has come for me to give my verdict on this set. Overall, I think the Monster set is a great addition to my Doctor Who action figure collection. This is easily my favourite out of this year's B&M exclusive figure sets. You get a really nice new variant of the Cyber Controller from Tomb of the Cybermen, which was a really hard figure to find unless you got the original version like I did back in 2009. You also get a really nice new variant of a clean Cyberman from Attack of the Cybermen, and I'm sure this is a figure that many people will be army building. If they ever do a single carded release of this figure, I'll quite happily pick up another couple. The Sontaran figure is also a nice re-release as well. Probably the least exciting figure of this set for me, because I already have quite a few new series Sontaran figures, but seeing as we haven't had a new series Sontaran figure for several years, I guess this is also one that will be a new addition to many Doctor Who action figure collections out there. And from me, the Monster set gets a very well earned 9.9 out of 10. My only problems with this set are very small nitpicks, those being with the Sontaran's gun accessory and the mouthpiece on the Attack of the Cyberman figure. I would have liked to have seen the gun accessory with the Sontaran retaining its silver wash from the original Sontaran variants from the new series, as I thought this was a nice little extra bit of paintwork that helped to bring out a lot of detail within the sculpt and also make it a little bit more realistic looking. And I would have liked to have seen a more updated look for the Attack of the Cybermen's head, so that maybe it didn't have the transparent mouth this time. But still, I'm really pleased with both of these figures and the Cyber Controller. And if you haven't got this set already, I'd definitely recommend that you get out there and get it while you can, because once it's no longer in stores, it'll probably become quite highly sought after, especially among the collectors that have missed out on the original versions of these figures in recent years. And that is pretty much it for my review of the Doctor Who B&M exclusive 2017 monster set. Hope you've all enjoyed watching this review. If you want to share your thoughts on these figures, you can do so in the comment section below. I'm not sure what my next Doctor Who action figure review is going to be of yet, because there are so many from the past few years that I want to review, but I am thinking of maybe doing a review of the 8th Doctor from the Night of the Doctor shortly, and also the Curator set from Day of the Doctor, so be on the lookout for them. And yeah, thanks for watching this review, guys, and I will see you again soon.